Welcome, Legacy Warriors, to episode 6 of the Legacy Warrior podcast, where we help you become the best version of self and elevate your legacy using the exact tools we use to transform ours. Look, guys, I'm here with my partner in crime. You know, I just like to call her my partner in crime, and I don't know why, because we didn't do no crimes, just that the police are looking for us. So Stephanie's here. We're so excited to bring you our first ever guest. And look, there's a vetting process that happens when we want to bring guests on the show. It's really important for us to bring people who are really living authentically to who they are, that really live that triumphant, legacy warrior minded lifestyle that we want to bring on here to help you understand what they did to step into their own best self and their own legacy. And so this person, Christopher Rausch, is a dear, dear friend of mine. I've known Christopher for 18 months. Most of the time he doesn't, get on my nerves and stuff. No, I'm just playing.
Never.
I've known Christopher probably about 18 months since I started this journey myself. And I got to tell you, there's people who try to show up a certain way, but they don't really live authentically. But that's not this man that we're going to have on today. He continues to live triumphantly through his life adversity. Because of his life adversity, he helps people literally around the world. He is one of the most authentic human beings I've ever met. I'm going to read his bio in a minute, but Christopher, what's up, brother? It's great to see you.
It's great to see you guys. Thank you so much for having me on here. I am honored beyond belief to be your first guest on this amazing podcast. So thank you guys for dancing in conversation with me today, and looking forward to seeing where this goes.
Yeah, I just have to say this about Christopher. I really love and respect him because he has had a hard life, but even though he's had a hard life, he has a heart of gold. And I see him constantly helping and encouraging others despite what he's been through. And to me, that's true authenticity, and you will not meet a more genuine person.
Oh, thank you, Steph. I appreciate that. Love you.
All right, before Christopher tears up, let me give you the bio for my brother from another mother, because this is important for you guys to understand this man who we have on here today. So Christopher Rausch is the world's most effective and impactful, this next word, unstoppable, no excuses coach, speaker. He facilitates workshops. He hosts retreats and leads retreats, and who really lives a life that is the epitome of going from a victim to a victor. I like to talk about showing people the unbreakable nature of the human spirit, and that's who Christopher is. And so today, he's an international keynote speaker. He really captivates and enthralls audiences with his story, but really it's about creating the experience when he's on stage or when he's emceeing, to bring people in, generate the emotion so there's real change. It's not about instant inspiration that dissipates as soon as he leaves. But more importantly, and we'll talk about this towards the end, he is the literal no excuses coach. And so if you want someone to take you from sitting in regret, stalled out in your life, you can't continue. Yeah, he even got the wristband. For those of you watching the video, he's showing us his no excuses wristband. Go to that YouTube channel.
He
Shameless
will take
plug.
away all your excuses.
Yes. Because you know what? And this is what I love is you literally have taken away the excuses for yourself. And that's what's important. And we talk about this, Christopher's not a therapist either. He's not a counselor either. Neither is Stephanie and I. This is real life experiences, getting into the arena, doing the battle, really fighting, getting knocked down, getting scraped up, getting bloodied, getting back up, and continuing down the path in order for you to step into who you are, and then really being able to then turn around and help other people step into who they are. And so I just love you, brother. I'm I feel really blessed to have you here, really blessed to have known you. You and I talk a couple times a week. We just keep each other inspired. It's like a mini mastermind every single time me and you talk, and really moving down this journey. So I want to start off today, and Steph, I like to call Steph the detective. That's what my daughters call, my teenagers call her too. So she's going to have some real good questions today. No pressure, but I know you just come up with some.
Yeah.
Ask me anything.
I'm a very curious person, so I have a lot of questions.
I love it.
Christopher, talk to us give us a synopsis of your story, because we can't get to how you became triumphant without understanding the trials that led you to become the person you are today. So give us that kind of recap of who you really are and the things you've been through.
Well, this will take about half an hour. No, seriously, thank you guys again for having me on here. It's such a blessing to sit here and dance in conversation with you guys. And, essentially my life began as pretty much a soap opera, if you will. I was born to a mother with various psychological disorders and chemical dependencies and whatnot. She was, let's say, promiscuous, if you will. So when I was born into the world back in 1969, there was already my sister in the world she was already 9 years old. My mother was pregnant at 18. And then when I was born, she was 26 and never knew my biological father. He was married and had a family of his own. I found out later on. So the turmoil and the chaos that was going on in our house, in South Los Angeles was pretty intense. We were on welfare, food stamps, lived in a cockroach infested house, on 110th Street in Inglewood. If anybody knows Southern California, Inglewood is not the best place in the world for a white kid in a black neighborhood. So I grew up like what I used to call, before I was more educated, I used to call it reverse discrimination. Like I was the only white kid in a black neighborhood. And so it was pretty tumultuous. And then ultimately we got out of that situation because of the activity. I was trying to go to school, and because I was white, I was getting picked on and being treated differently. I didn't understand that because my first best friend, if you will, was a kid named Tyrone that lived down the street. And unfortunately he got sickle cell anemia. And I found out that later on he passed away. They told me that he went to live with his grandparents, but apparently he died, which is pretty traumatic. And so ultimately we got out of Inglewood and we moved up to Anaheim here in Southern California, which is a beautiful middle class neighborhood. And at the time, my mother's boyfriend came to live with us, and my sister came to live with us. So I thought for the first time in my life, we were going to have a family and it was all going to be normal. And I got to see what other families were like living on the street. And so that's all I ever wanted, was to have a family and to have safety and security, certainty and love. And then ultimately in 1982, I came home from being in the 7th grade and found out that my stepdad, if you will, left. He got a divorce from my mom. My sister left a little bit before that. When I was 9 years old, she was 16. She said, "Baby brother, I can't take mom anymore, so I'm going to go live with my dad." And so then it was just me and my mom and about 30 cats and 4 dogs. And so ultimately, when we did lose the house, she spent the last bit of money she had after losing her job. We had $5,000 in the bank, and she spent all of that to try to save her favorite cat. And then ultimately the cat wound up dying, and she didn't find a job. So she said, "We have to move." And I said, "Where are we going to move to?" And she goes, "I'm not sure." And so at that point, she wasn't willing to give up her animals or the dogs or anything. And she had this idea that she wanted to move into another house. She wouldn't accept moving into an apartment. So May 10th, 1982, we left that 4-bedroom house in that middle-class neighborhood to live in a 1969 Country Squire station wagon with 18 of those 30 cats, because that's all we could catch, and 2 of the dogs. And for the next
Christopher, let me jump in right here, because I think this is really important. Where you go from very chaotic childhood at this point, you don't have a father figure in your life.
No.
You're just really surviving minute to minute in these moments as a kid. I know, because I went through a lot of chaos and trauma. Yeah. But I don't want to breeze past what you just said. That's 18 cats. And would you say 6 dogs?
18 cats. Inside the car was 18 cats and 2 dogs. Honestly, I'm always confused about that. And there's nobody I can ask anymore because my mom is gone. But I was pretty sure it was 18 cats and 4 dogs at first. And then we wound up downsizing it to 2 dogs. But yeah, it was pretty insane. It was pretty insane.
So in one station wagon. Yeah. So people need to understand and get that visual of what he just talked about. I don't, as we tell our stories sometimes, Christopher, we just kind of breeze over some of those details. So I might stop you in between. Steph might stop you in between.
Oh, good. I love it.
I want people to get that visual of this little boy with his mother in a station wagon. That's hard enough without
all those animals.
All the animals too.
Oh yeah.
So, okay, go
rolling
ahead.
Rolling circus, a rolling zoo, literally. And so we thought it was going to be something that was temporary. My grandfather had offered to get us another house, but the deal was that she could not have as many animals, and she was not willing to sacrifice their lives. And the quite honest truth, after we left the house, we left a bunch of stuff out in the front yard, my mini bike. We couldn't get it all in the moving van. And ultimately, even after we became homeless, we went back to that neighborhood a couple of times the following nights to try to catch more cats. Because literally she opened all the doors because the sheriff was showing up with animal control, and she felt, well, maybe they might have a better chance being out in the neighborhood and we can come back and get them. And so we thought it was going to be something temporary. And unfortunately, it lasted 4 years. And then through those ensuing 4 years of digging through dumpsters and collecting cans and bottles and everything to try to survive, living in and out of motels periodically. Ultimately, when I tried to commit suicide twice. Unfortunately, I sucked at it. And one time I came back to this motel we were staying at. I don't call it living at. I had a gun.
Talk about your age at this point. How old are you at this point when you're talking about going back to the hotel?
About 16, 17.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had working part-time jobs and full-time jobs starting at the age of 15. I started working at Carl's Jr., started working at telemarketing jobs to try to keep us in these motels, at least, for a couple of nights a week or whatever. My mom was, trying to sit there and, have all these excuses why she couldn't get a job. And so it was up to me to go out there and try to earn a living. And I didn't even realize how young I was at the time, looking back on it now. And then ultimately, she was not doing anything to help herself. And because I had this experience where a guy put a gun to my head because he thought I was racist. And I told him, I said, I don't care what color your skin is. I care what carton of cigarettes you have in your hand. I said, I don't smoke those. And I reached in my back pocket to pull out a pack of Cools, which are menthol cigarettes. And as I reached back, he thought I was reaching for a weapon, and he put a 9mm gun to my forehead. And he says, oh, it's because I'm black. And he starts going off on me. And I sit there and looked at him and I said, if you're going to pull the trigger, pull the effing trigger. Yeah. And fortunately, one of my buddies, Will, another black dude, a good friend of mine, we were helping out. We always try to help people out. Even if we didn't have anything, we would try to help other people out. And so he came out and he's like, no, him and his moms are cool. Him and his moms are cool. And fortunately, the guy put the gun away. And I was just up at that point. It was like, okay, what's going to change out of this situation? Out of everything that I had been through, my mom was unfortunately raped. She was out collecting cans one day while I had to stay inside because we wouldn't want to be truant. We didn't want anybody to see me not being in school. So I would have to stay inside the motel all day. And she would go out and collect cans so we could have food for that night. And she came back one time and she's like, oh, hey, this guy wants to give me like 6 bags of cans. And so she goes, I need to take the car over to get them. And at that point, we had the cats inside this other motel room, which was crazy. And so she went, and I figured she was going to be gone for about an hour.
Wait, so she had those cats in a hotel room too?
Oh yeah, yeah. We snuck them in. Yeah, we had them in the bathroom.
I was gonna say, how did you get away with that? Okay.
It was in the cover of darkness. My mother was the one thing I will attribute my mother to is that she was very resourceful, and she would not give up. If she wanted something, she went after it. And I do take that trait from her, so I do respect her for that. But she came back a couple hours later. I was wondering where she went, and she came back and her hair was all disheveled and everything. And her face, just look on her face, I'd never seen that. My mom was super confident, super strong, super committed. And she came back and she said, I was just raped. And I was like, well, what's that? I didn't even understand what that was. At that time, I was about 14. And she goes, I was sexually assaulted by that guy. I went to his house and he said, oh, the cans are in the back bedroom. And she goes, when I went in the back bedroom, he followed me behind me and raped me. And so she came back, wound up calling the police. She filed a report against him. And actually, she testified against him in court. But unfortunately, because of our living situation, they made it out to be like she needed the money and she was being promiscuous. Yeah. And so unfortunately, he wasn't convicted. But later on, we found out, we saw in the newspaper that he was convicted. So because my mom did testify, even while we were homeless, she went to court and did all that stuff because she was mean about her conviction. Ultimately, he did get convicted, but to the point where I finally had to take a step back and looking at everybody in the motel, the drugs and the prostitution and everything that was going on, I figured I'm going to get out of this situation in one of 3 ways. I'm going to get out of there in a cardboard box or a pine box because I was doing bad things and risking my life. And I was trying to kill myself with drugs and alcohol and everything else and hanging out with bad people. Or I was going to get out in a police car because, again, I was doing bad things. And I figured, okay, I'm going to wind up in jail pretty soon. Or I'm going to have to take responsibility for my life and leave this situation and go do whatever I personally can to have my survival and have a life that I deserve. And so ultimately, God, source, universe has a way of putting things in our path to see if we're serious about taking these risks. Yep. And a couple of days later, me and a guy that lived in this motel with us, not in the motel room, but in the same motel, we had a telemarketing job. And so we wound up going to this guy's apartment in Huntington Beach. It sounds creepy, but we were setting roofing contractor appointments. And we went to his apartment and he says, hey guys, I got some good news and I got some bad news. And I was like, okay, I've had enough bad news to last a lifetime. What's going on? And he goes, well, I know you guys are in that cheesy motel. I know you've been homeless. He goes, so I want to leave you guys in my apartment. And it was in Huntington Beach, beautiful place, Surf City, 2-bedroom, beautiful grounds. I'd never seen anything so nice. I thought the guy was rich. And we're like looking at each other like, wow, oh my God, this is amazing. And I said, well, wait, what's the bad news? And he goes, well, I'm moving the operations to Texas. He already downsized from an office because he was losing business. And then he did it out of his apartment. And we're like, okay, wow. And then we were sitting there getting all excited, like, we can do this, we can do this. And then it dawned on me, oh, wait, I have my mother and living in the motel. I can't abandon her. Everybody else has abandoned her. And ultimately, I gave it a couple of days. And my friend Robert says, well, if you're not going to do it, he goes, I'm going to do it with my brother John and these other people. And I was sitting on the stairs and I was just looking out at the motel and look at the prostitution, the drugs and everything else. I was like, I have to do this for me. And so I thought for the first time in my life, guys, that I would go to my mom at 17 years old and say, hey, listen, Mom, I've got an opportunity. I'll still come back here and help you. I'll do as much as I possibly can for you, but I need to get out of here. I'm doing bad things and I'm only getting worse. She had no idea I tried to kill myself. She had no idea I was doing drugs. I didn't tell her until way later in life. She goes, I thought something was up. And I'm like, yeah, because she was off doing something. She was actually helping a drug dealer while she was also being an informant to the Anaheim Police Department. No shit. Oh, man. It was crazy. And so I took that risk, and I thought she was going to tell me, like, Chris, go do that. I've already screwed up your life enough. You need to get out of here. I'm not doing anything myself to get us out of this situation. We actually won the lottery, if you could believe this. We won $5,000. She won $5,000 on a scratcher. And I was like, oh my God, we can get an apartment. I can go back to school, you know, And she would not do it. She says, I want a 4-bedroom house with a pool. Kid you not. I talk about psychiatric, you know, she was brilliant, book smart, but people smart and life smart. She was not so smart. And so I did leave the situation, and she called me every single name in the book. She tried to have me arrested for stealing my own, or for taking my own car, because she said she needed transportation. She goes, well, I have to look for a job. And I said, well, you're going to have to take the bus. And ultimately through that, I found out about codependency and everything. And she ultimately had to get stronger and go back and get a job. But for me, I wound up getting around different people, brighter, smarter people. And a particular individual named Bill White, who was my girlfriend's dad. I met a girl, actually got to date. I never got to date or do anything while we were homeless or anything else. I didn't have any friends. And so I started having friends and everything. And I met this girl, and she was beautiful and sweet and everything. She says, my parents want to meet you. And at that time, guys, I had long hair, cigarette smoking, beer drinking, whiskey drinking, drugs, you know.
Statistic, right?
Yeah.
Well, before you go to that, let's unpack some of this, because like you gave the audience a lot. Let's unpack some of this, because I think it's really important to get to the point where you chose you. And then that's where the healing can start. Right. But you got to choose you first. So when you how did
I wanted to clarify one thing. So you were out of school from 7th grade. You never went back to school. You dropped out of school in 7th grade and never went back?
Halfway through the 7th grade, yeah.
So that whole time you were living homeless from 7th grade till you got out of high school, or what would be high school age.
Yeah.
And you were homeless and not in school.
Right. Yeah.
All that time.
So during the day, I had to stay inside so people wouldn't see me. When I got older, because I started growing facial hair when I was about 16, I was able to go out and people couldn't tell that how old I was. Yeah. But yeah, originally, you know, because if I would be seen outside, they're like, why isn't that kid in school? You know? And so one time we were out collecting cans one day, and the cop showed up and was like, I was collecting cans while she was doing something else. And the cop asked me, like, why aren't you in school? And I was like, well, I'm homeless right now. You know, we're in between places. And so he had called my mom, and that's when we started hiding me and not going back, not being allowed to go outside.
Okay.
So for you, when you think about not having a father figure, how that was really affecting you, especially when you hit those teenage years, right? I think that there's a reason there's two parents, and sometimes it doesn't work out where two parents are in the situation together. Sometimes it works out like you, where you had one parent that was abusing you, putting you through chaotic situations, like the emotional toll, all those things, but not having a father. How do you feel like that affected you and like that teenage manhood kind of years?
I didn't even know any different. You don't know what you don't know. And so of course, all my life I saw, especially before we became homeless, I saw, you know, other families on the street, and I'm like, oh, wow, that's what a normal family looks like. You know, they have furniture in their house. We had a twin bed as a couch because of all the cats and everything. And I would see how other dads would be outside playing with their kids and whatnot. And my mom's boyfriend, I can't even call him a stepdad. My mom's boyfriend was living with us. And I went to him one day and I said, hey, Jim, you want to go outside and throw the football? And he's like, he goes, no, my shoulder hurts. And he had a son from another marriage. And when his son came to live with us, he actually, all of a sudden, his shoulder didn't hurt and went out and started playing with him. So I kept wondering what was wrong with me. Like, why didn't my biological father want to be a part of my life? Why didn't this guy want to be a father figure to me? So I never really understood it, but it was just really confusing for me at that particular time, because your hormones are starting to rage. You know, I'm looking at girls, and I'm sitting here, you know, dealing with this mother and having to do everything that she wants me to do and acquiesce to her. And all I ever wanted was her love and affection and her support. But it felt like I was always just that close to getting it, but I kept having to bust my ass and do things for her and sacrifice my own happiness and my mental well-being, to be honest.
So did you ever know your father? Like, did you ever meet him?
No, I know who he is. I saw him one time, I think when I was 2 years old. My mom said that, because I said, I have this faint memory. She told me that he looks like Sam Elliott, the actor Sam Elliott. She goes, basically your father looked like Sam Elliott. And actually my biological father was an actor in Hollywood. His name is David Cross. So if you look up on IMDb, David Richard Cross, he was in a couple of B movies back in the 60s. And actually it's crazy. We do look alike. I actually found the movie years ago. I found it on VH. I found it and I paid like $100 for it. It was on eBay. Yeah. And so I actually got to see his character role in it. So it was pretty cool. But yeah, I never got to see him, and I never wanted to disturb his family because I knew he was married. My mom said he was married, and actually his wife was pregnant at the same time that she was pregnant with me. So I have brothers and sisters out there, half brothers and sisters out there, but I just never wanted to pursue that and find out, and disturb their family. But later on in life, I did find out. I wanted to find out from a medical standpoint what kind of medical history they had on their side of the family. And so I did find out that he passed away in 1993 from stomach cancer at the age of 57.
And I think you said something really crucial that I want people to take away. You were always trying to earn that love. You were always trying to obtain that love. It was like you would get just close enough and then almost like it would get snatched away. And so I think you and I relate a lot on this, Chris, is when you're getting negative physical and emotional, feedback is the only word I can think of right now. But when you're getting those negative things happening to you, you almost don't even know how to really accept the love as you move into adulthood, because you don't even know what the heck it even looks like. And I thought it was really cool when you mentioned, the man who was going to help you with the apartment, and then the other person who was helping you with the mentorship, and your ability to work on accepting those in the process, because it's sometimes, so talk about that, like, because it's scary, I think, sometimes when you've been hurt so much.
Oh, yeah.
To accept mentorship and accept help without being fearful that it's going to lead to something negative. How was your mindset in really accepting some of that? Because it's huge that you were doing that in your late teenage years.
That's a great question. Well, I've never been asked that, so thank you for doing it. I've been interviewed hundreds of times, thankfully, and sometimes you get the same old questions, so I'm glad you're diving deep into this. Yeah, I was guarded. I was super guarded. I didn't trust anybody. I was constantly ready to flinch, whether somebody raised their hand, because my mom physically abused me quite a bit, not to the extent that you had experienced, but pretty significant. And so I was just constantly guarded, and I didn't trust anybody. It was like I had a small inner circle from people I met at this final motel that we were at before I wound up getting my life together, and didn't have any friends or anything like that. So when I started seeing people that were trying to take an interest in me and help me, I did not trust them, and I was very guarded. And still to this day, my initial reaction is like, okay, what do you want from me? And what's this angle? I'm constantly very, very cynical still to this day. You still have to earn my trust. That's why I love you guys, because I believe wholeheartedly in our friendship and our relationship. And I love and appreciate you guys. There's not too many people I can say that about. So in answer to your question, when Bill came into my life, I was like, okay, when Tammy said that, my parents want to meet you, I said, are you kidding me? Like, I've been homeless. Like, I'm like, look at me. I look like a drug dealer, and, I look good and everything to my standards and whatnot. But I'm like, your parents, middle upper class family. She was like almost the prom queen. So she was Miss Popularity.
You're like the bad boy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It was, at that time, there was a movie with Nick Cage, one of Nick Cage's first movies, Valley Girl, where it was like the wrong side of the tracks kind of thing. And there was exactly a depiction of that. And so when I said, your parents are going to want you to break up with me, and honestly, stepping back a little bit, when I met Tammy, it was a situation where one of the guys that lived in the apartment with us, we had 4 guys living in this apartment to try to make it. We have ketchup sandwiches and stuff like that. One of the guys worked at Kmart. And so he went to Kmart and he says, hey, we're going to have a party. And so all these girls showed up. And this one girl took an interest in me, and ultimately we started dating, and she was trying to do nice things for me. She was trying to buy me food and buy me clothes and stuff. I was like, what do you want? And it was like, no, you don't need to do that. I didn't feel like I deserved it. Like, she was just being so nice to me. I just didn't feel like I deserved it. It was like, no, it's okay. It's okay. I'm still that way. When people want to give me stuff, I've gotten better, because in order to give and have other people receive, I have to learn how to receive. But I just felt awkward and weird. Like, no, I don't want to be a charity case, and, I'm okay. And so when I met her family, I was actually quite astonished that, when everybody looked at me and like judged me, like, don't judge a book by its cover. Bill, especially, both of them actually, Beverly and Bill, looked inside of me and said, tell us about your story. And so I was honest with him. I said, this is what I've been up against and everything. And so Bill looked at me one day and he says, well, have you ever thought about going back to school? And I'm like, oh, here we go. I can't date his daughter because I'm not smart. Here we go.
Better get your education.
Yeah, education. That's what I actually say. It's funny. And really, when I was in school, I did very poorly, especially, first grade through 6th grade. I was bullied at school. I had a hearing deficiency in my left ear. I couldn't see the class. I couldn't see the board. So I was having trouble seeing, but nobody ever had me tested. And then when I would raise my hand or do something, if I got it wrong, it was like, oh, Christopher, you're not paying attention. So I just stopped raising my hand to stop doing things. And ultimately, when I got in the 7th grade, I went from being bullied to being a bullier, started doing drugs and started getting into fights and getting expelled. And so, I just didn't think I was ever going to go back to school. I didn't think it was a possibility for me. He's like, you can go back to school and you can get what's called a GED. I was like, what's this? And he goes, it's a general equivalency diploma. And I'm like, all right, well, I guess I should probably take advice. One of my first things was like, okay, you seem to be successful. Like, that research, Rob and Duplicate. Like, if you seem to be successful, you have a room in your house that people don't even sit on the furniture. I didn't even have furniture much when I was growing up. So I'm like, okay, you got a job and you guys have nice things. Maybe I should just see what you got, what advice you have. And so he told me to go, get this thing called a GED. And this was before the internet. So I was like, all right, well, I like her. She's great. These people seem to be nice. He seems to be successful. So I had to pick up the phone, started calling schools, saying hi. I dropped out in 7th grade. I was all embarrassed. I didn't know what to say or what to do. I just kept calling school after school. And then I found out there was this school, Wintersburg High School in Westminster, California. And they said, sure, come on down and take a test and we'll see what's up. And, you can take some continuation classes and graduate. And I thought, honestly, at that point, I'm like, I'm so stupid. I'm not smart. I did poorly in school. This is going to take forever. They're going to find out I'm stupid and then I'm not going to be able to date his daughter anymore. Right. And at that point, I honestly just figured, as long as I can keep 2 or 3 jobs, I'll do okay in life. I'll be able to keep food on the table as long as I can keep a roof over my head. I didn't have any big aspirations whatsoever. I was just surviving day to day to day to day. And I didn't have any wherewithal about planning my life because my mom never, said, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? It was just about surviving that day. And even as a kid, this, Walt, you're just surviving day to day. Can I go a day without getting my ass kicked? Can I go a day without, having somebody yell at me or call me a piece of shit? Or something like that?
Actually, I wanted to jump in here just for a second to say, so her father, what was his name again?
Bill.
Bill. So I love that Bill didn't just judge you and say, he's not good enough for my daughter. He actually took a second to say he wanted to know what your story was. And I think that's so important because this is something that I really want to focus on in some future episodes that we do is that it is that like when we see a child that's acting out and is problematic, we shouldn't just punish them. We should be trying to find out what is causing that because a child doesn't just become that way. They learn it.
Oh, yeah.
Or something's happening that's making them act that way. And so I think it's so awesome that he recognized that and he wanted to help you and he guided you to do something, to help you get your life on track.
Like real mentorship, right?
Yeah.
It's pretty remarkable.
Yes. And a lot of times I think those people get placed in our life for a reason.
Right.
100%.
There's always someone that ends up coming into your life that they were put there for you. But
do you see that they were put there for you? That's the thing.
I didn't. Right? Not at the time.
You recognized, hey, well, I like what I see that they have, and I can do something different, and I can be better. I don't have to live in this life because that's another key component to you changing your life around. And you stop looking at like how life's happening to me.
Right.
And well, life can really happen for me. And I know that's huge, but like Walt talks about it a lot too, because the same kind of life, he went through the same kind of life. And so you did start to answer the question that I was going to ask, which was, so what point did you realize I can make my life different? I can take control of my life.
What point was that? Was that honestly when I went to do the GED thing? I really thought it was all planned out. I figured I was going to fail it. They were going to tell me, okay, you're going to have to take 3 years of classes. There's no way I could do it. I'm working I was working 2 jobs during the week and 1 job during the weekend. And I was helping out a guy who moved people. I did it under the table. So I was literally working all the time. So I went there, found the school and, went and took the test. And then they called me, I don't know, about a week later and they said, okay, you're not actually too bad. You need to make up 3 classes. And I was like, wow, 3 classes, that's kind of crazy. And so ultimately after 6 months of taking these continuation classes, they said, I think we're ready to have you test again. And so lo and behold, much to my surprise, I'm actually a lot smarter than I thought I was. And I passed the test and I got the GED. I got the piece of paper in the mail and I was so euphoric. I was like,
that's awesome.
Oh my God, this is like the first step. This is like the first
proud
step.
of yourself, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. I was like, are you sure you got the scores right? Cause I literally, God's my witness. I thought I was going to be 5 years of school. I'm like, I dropped out in the 7th grade. There's 8th grade, 9th grade, 10th grade, 11th grade, 12th grade.
Yeah.
I got 6 more grades to finish out here. And granted, I didn't have to dissect a frog and do stuff like that. But ultimately, when I got that piece of paper in the mail, I felt so accomplished. I was like, oh my God, I got this. And the reason at that point, all the reason why I got it was to prove to him that I could still date your daughter. Because, we were having a good relationship. And so I showed him the piece of paper. I'm like, look, Bill, I did it. We had dinner out in the patio and everything. And he's like, wow, I'm really proud of you. That's amazing. He goes, what do you think about going to college? And I'm in the back of my mind, I'm like, what does this guy want from me? Right?
Are you not entertained?
His daughter just graduated high school. So I actually caught up. I was 18 years old at this time. I never got to go to high school or all that fun stuff, but I actually did go to her high school prom as her date, albeit I was on acid. That was a lot of fun. No, it wasn't. So I was sitting there thinking, I'm like, college, I never thought even about going to college, and I was scared out of my brains. But I went to Golden West Community College here in Southern California. And I remember pulling into the parking lot and seeing all these kids walking in with their school books. I'm like, I don't fit in. I'm not that person. I'm not those guys. I don't belong here. This is not my spot. I should be out, in construction or collecting cans or something like that. But I just took one step. This is what I talk about. I just took just one step. Just let me get inside that admissions building. Let me just get inside there. All I have to do is ask them if I can come to school here. And if they tell me no, then I'm going to go back and tell him I can't go, and case closed. And I walked in there. I remember this vividly. There was a desk right there, a counter right there. And I walked in and I said, hi. I said, I have no idea how to do this, but I would like to come to school here. Can you please help me? And she was like, sure, no problem. 3 hours later, I met with a guidance counselor, I guess, if you will. And I decided on a business degree. I had no idea what I wanted to do really. And I said, okay, let's just go with general business. And my first class they gave me was interpersonal communication skills. And I
Probably
literally
the best class.
And I went, well, here's the funny thing. I went to the bookstore and I'm looking at it. I'm like, interpersonal, like, I said, what's this about? Oh, you're going to learn how to speak and, listen effectively and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, they think I'm that stupid that I need to learn how to talk. That's what I thought as I was walking.
Take it personal, right?
I was like, what? And so I got
it's one of the best skills you can.
Yeah. Oh, I was so glad that was my first one. I learned so much. Those principles of truly listening, actively listening, and paraphrasing back to people, that helped me so much in my success in my life, because my mom was all about being understood and being in power and control. She didn't care what you thought or what opinions you had. It was her way or the highway. And so in this class, you had to sit there and listen to people talk and actually paraphrase back to them what they said. And so that really helped me. And so long story short, I wound up going to community college. Then I wound up going to get my bachelor's degree after that. And so after 12 years, I graduated with my master's degree. The same year, I bought my first house.
Wow.
There's a lot of stuff in between there.
And I love what you said. So you said action, right? And I think I want our listeners to really hear what you're saying. So I want to edify this. Sure. And I think back to where you're 17 and you're on the precipice of making this decision of, I feel obligated to help my mother out. As crazy and chaotic as it is, I get that, right? As a kid, you still want to hang in there with your parent because I went through the same thing with both of mine. But you had to take action, just like I did at one point in my life, to stop running from what's happening and start running into the rest of your life. At 17, you had to say, enough. I got to make a decision to choose me.
Yeah.
You met Bill. You took in that mentorship. You made a decision to go get your GED. There's plenty of fish in the sea, right? Even if the relationship was good, you could have been like, whatever, I'm not trying to do this, bro. I'm trying to, go get these other things done. I'm trying to party. I'm trying to drink. Then you made the decision again to embrace the fear of the unknown, to walk into that college and say, I need help, because ultimately that's what you did. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm scared. I need help. You just said it like, I don't know what I'm doing. Can you help me? And they were like, yes, people are ready and willing and able to help you achieve your goals and dreams, even if you don't even know where the end state for your dream and goal is. But without the action, this is what I love, Chris, because you do take action, bro, in your life. I see it all the time.
Thank you.
So talk about like what you learned from 17, what you learned from GED, what you learned from master's degree. Like, what did that really teach you when you looked at your life resume about taking action?
Just like take imperfect action. For me, it was just all about, trying to, my mother would be very, very critical of my homework and stuff like that. I'd have her proofread it or stuff like that. And it was always red marks. And she was just always, on me about being perfect. Like, the glitter box has to be completely clean. The water bowls have to be filled to a certain level. It was OCD to the max. And so what I learned is like, just taking that imperfect action, not sitting in your head, wondering how it's going to happen. Just start taking those steps. And ultimately you're going to figure it out. You're going to figure it out as you go. You're going to learn as you grow. There's nothing you can't do. There's nothing you really do to predict what's going to happen. You just have to show up and be willing, an active participant to learn what it is that you can do. And even during all this time, I still went back to the motel every night for the longest period of time, helped her with money and still helped her take care of herself. And, it was all about just continuing to show up and giving myself an opportunity, because I never gave myself an opportunity. I was waiting for somebody to come validate me and tell me that I was smart, but necessarily I had to go out there and find it out for myself and take those imperfect actions and learn and grow, as we all have to do as anything in life. Still to this day at 54, I'm still going out there and taking that imperfect action every single day to try to learn what I can do. And that's why I tell people about being unstoppable. It's like, continue to go. If you have a vision of something that you want to do, you think you may want to do, go out there and actively pursue that and learn as you grow, because that's the best way that you can fundamentally figure out, what's going to work for you and what's not.
I just wanted to point out that to everyone listening, that look at Christopher. He is an example of, he dropped out of school in 7th grade and managed to go back and get his master's degree. There's many of us who did all of our school and never got our master's degree. So he is epitomizing that there's no excuse. You have no excuses of why you can't pursue what you want in your life. I mean, he just showed you right there. He had everything against him, and he still managed to make it happen because he believed in himself enough to go after it and not make the excuses. And so I just wanted to really point that out, because that is why he is the no excuses coach, is because he did not let excuses stop him from pursuing what he really wanted out of life. And we all have that ability if we just take action and believe in ourselves.
Right.
Yes,
right.
You got that right.
Start embracing the fear of the unknown. I think that's the biggest thing, Chris, is you did all of it scared. Yeah. You did all of it. Oh, yeah. You say imperfect action. I say messy action. Anything in life, you're not ever going to really be prepared. You're not prepared for parenthood. You're not prepared to go to school and get your master's degree. You just have to do it anyway, knowing, and more importantly, and this is why I love having Christopher on here with us today, it's about giving you the belief that you can do it. Look, Stephanie, me, Christopher, there's no difference between us at all from the person listening. Yeah. The other side of his no excuses wristband says believe.
Yes.
And this is about us giving you the belief. If you're sitting out there listening and you're like, I just feel stuck and I just can't seem to get over this hump. Yes, you can. It's like I said at the beginning, the first episode, this is a judgment-free zone, but it ain't no growth-free zone. There's no excuse you can make for yourself of why you can't go after those goals. And so, Christopher, I know you went into corporate America, you did these things, but I want to really talk about you as a father now. Cool. Because I think, and I love the way that you talk about this and being present, and I've heard you speak about it many times. Talk about, you moved through corporate America, you had a lot of success, you had this epiphany of moving into and being the no excuses coach and using your history to help people change their legacies. But you also had to do it for yourself in your own family and create an alternative legacy elevated from where you started. So talk about Jackson and just being a father, especially for those people who are scared to be a parent because they're worried about continuing the generational legacies. Talk about really breaking that cycle and creating a new one.
Yes. And that's such a great question. Thank you. Thank you guys. This is a beautiful conversation, by the way. All my life, I never really wanted to be a parent. God's honest truth. When Barbara and I got together, my now wife, I want to just back up for a second before I talk about that. One thing I want to talk about, Bill, is unfortunately, me and Tammy actually got married eventually and had a great experience. We were married for 5 years. Unfortunately, we were married very young and we were naive about these things. So we ultimately got divorced when we were 23. But the aspect of that is I wound up working with Bill. He gave me a job at his company. And so I really became close to him and his family. I adopted him as my family. I called her mom, as her mom's mom. And ultimately, when we broke up and divorced, it really crushed him because he felt like I was one of his sons. He had other sons biologically, but, we were just so tight. And most of the things that we did, we'd even drink together and work together and all these different things. But ultimately, when he got sick after, 4 or 5 years after we got divorced, I got the blessing of being there by his bedside, holding his hand. Along the other side was his wife. All his other kids were in the room and other family members were in the room. But for me to stand there and hold his hand, I get choked up. When I got to stand there and hold his hand and tell him, Bill, I got this. I'll be here for the girls no matter what, because I heard from his wife that, it sucked when we got divorced. He took it personally, not personal, but he just felt like there was a void in his life. And I still wanted to be there with them, but they felt uncomfortable about it. So to be there to hold his hand when he's passing away and say, Bill, I got this. I'll be there for the kids. And the God's honest truth. After that, a few years later, Beverly was hit by a drunk driver and I was the first person in the emergency room. was there. Their daughter, Tiffany, Tammy's sister, unfortunately passed away at the age of 30. They asked me, again, years and years after we were divorced, they asked me to go give the eulogy at the church in front of 500 people. It was crazy. I've been there for Tammy and her situations, so I felt an honor, and I felt a positive obligation, I guess, if you will, to still be there with the family. And still to this day, because Tammy's birthday was just recently, I've known her for 34 years, which is crazy, since we were 18, or 37 years or something like that. It's crazy. But still to this day, I still call her mom. And we still have a close relationship. I'll take Jackson over there. So I just wanted to kind of share that. So I did get an opportunity, through all the ups and downs and everything, to be there by his side as he took his last breath. So I consider that a blessing. It was one of the most crushing experiences of my life. I didn't understand what was going on. But ultimately, to answer your question, well, when I became a dad,
hold on. Now you went back to that. So now I have a question. You don't get out of that one. What would you tell Bill if he was here today, knowing like you were there for him in that moment, which I know there's a sense of duty and honor with that because he helped you so much, and you've grown so much since that moment even. What would you want to tell Bill today if he was sitting here?
Actually, I still talk to him to this day. When I sit there and I think about when I have problems in my life, I'll talk out loud. I'm like, Bill, what would you do? What would Bill do? And so I can still hear his voice. He was from Buffalo, New York. So he had this like, hey, Chris, so I can still hear him talking to me. But what would I say to him is I would thank him profusely. I would thank him for believing in me when I didn't have any belief in myself. Thank you for giving me those opportunities and not giving them to me, but allowing me the opportunity to try and be successful in those. And to thank him for being an excellent example as a parent, as a leader in his business. It taught me a lot about business and how to negotiate things, and seeing him in action. I would just thank him for being one of the biggest blessings of my life, because I don't know if he would have come into my life where things would have ended up. So he definitely came into to my life at the right time. And again, going back to that, when you take those chances and those risks, I'm not a particularly religious person, I'm a spiritual person, but I think God's source and universe says, okay, you're going to take this big risk. We're going to put some opportunities in place. We're also going to put some more challenges in place to see how bad you want it. But when Bill and Beverly and the White family, came into my life, still to this day, I thank them profusely. So much so is that Bill, when, before he inspired me to go back and get my GED, he looked at me one time, we were sitting in the backyard, and he said, Christopher, you're only limited by the parameters of your own mind. Again, Christopher, you're only limited by the parameters of your own mind. And I was like, okay, if I think I'm stupid, then I'm stupid, but if I think there's an opportunity, then there is. And so I would quote that every once in a while. I would say, you're only limited by the parameters of your own mind, William T. White. And eventually his wife came to me and she goes, Dad would want you to have that as your quote. So I want you to start using that quote as yours.
Beautiful.
I said, nah. And for the most part, sometimes I say it as mine, but every once in a while I said, this really belongs to Bill White, who gave me that opportunity. So it was phenomenal. I would say thank you for being here. And I know he's still here with me. I believe in spirit. I believe in guardian angels and things of that nature. But when I became a dad, it was pretty frightening. I mean, we tried when I was 40 and my wife was 30. She's 10 years younger than I am. And for 8 years, we were unsuccessful. We went through IVF, spent $25,000 trying to have a baby naturally. Unfortunately, both of us have situations that prevent us from having kids. So not prevent us, but it would take a lot of money to make it hard.
Yeah.
So we went the adoption route, and we were going through 2 different adoption agencies. I was 48 at the time when we got picked. And so literally had 2 weeks to find out that we were going to be parents. Literally, it was 2 weeks. And so when Jackson came into our life, we were there in the delivery room. My wife cut the umbilical cord. And when we drove home from Sacramento with our son in the car, I was mortified. I was like, oh my God, I have a short fuse for people who are stupid. I don't like to repeat myself. I have a lot of the same tendencies as my mother, but now I've equipped myself with filters and to be able to say, okay, let me take a pause. Let me think about this. How am I
respond versus react to the trigger?
Yeah. And so I was scared, like, man, what if this kid pisses me off? If I don't love this kid, if I don't like this kid, what kind of dad am I going to be? And I don't want to screw up another person's life. But ultimately, reading some parent books and talking a lot to parents, even before I became a dad, because as a coach and as a speaker, I've always been super curious, like at what point in our journey do we really get messed up? And I thought it was when we were teenagers. I figured, when we're teens, we're going through that change from being a kid to an adult. That's kind of where we get our belief systems screwed up. But as we've talked about so many times, the conditioning process happens between 0 and 5. So we become the people we're going to really become from 0 to 5. And looking back on the research that I've done, it's pretty surprising that I'm as loving as I am, that I'm as confident as I am and everything else, because I wasn't held, I wasn't loved, I wasn't cared for. And those are like the really super important years. So with my son, I just decided that, not going to live up to my mother's expectations. She said, never have the kids. She goes, because the cycle of abuse runs in our family. And I told her, I said, that's bullshit, Mom. I said, you chose to beat me. You chose to react to me. You chose to have unreasonable expectations about a 5-year-old. And so with my son now, God is my witness, I've never spanked him. I've only used my words. I get down on his level. And I've talked to parents so much over the years and asked them, like, what are your success principles? And they're like, really, again, going back to that philosophy, seek first to understand and listen. Like where is he at? Remind myself, okay, he's 5 years old. He's 6 years old. He's 3 years old. He's 2. Where is he at versus what do I want? And let's try to find some sort of connection and how I can be congruent with myself and my values to support that initial growth phase. And now to this day, he just turned 6 last November, and he's a beautiful, amazing kid. We have a lot of fun together, and he's taught me so much about myself and true, authentic love, because I never really had felt that in my childhood. I didn't really feel it at all in my childhood. And so now to be a dad and to experience this, I know that my mom's on the other side and Bill's on the other side. And, it's helped me really understand the true value of being in the moment. Because because of my situation being a survivor, this well, it was always about, okay, thinking about the past and what I screwed up or trying to avoid that, but also like plan A, B, C, D, E, F, G in the future. And that scarcity mindset, like, when is this going to end? I don't want to be homeless again. And so
the contingency plans for the contingency plans. Oh yeah. Made me great in the military.
Yeah. Thanks. No, I didn't want to do that. I want to cut my hair at that point. But so now it's taught me to be in the moments, like to really cherish these moments, because so oftentimes we think like one day, when I have this, when I'm a world famous speaker, or when I'm this, then I'll be happy. And what he's taught me is like, be in that moment, because those kids grow up so fast. You guys know, you got kids, teenagers, you got one daughter in college now. Yeah. It goes by so fast. So now it's taught me to just really enjoy the moments and surrender. Ever since leaving the corporate environment, it's taught me to surrender and just trust and have faith in the process. Just like that before, I didn't have it, but people will show up in your life and opportunities will show up in your life that will provide you that next challenge and that next opportunity to continue to grow. It's not going to always be easy. There's always going to be those peaks and those valleys. I actually just posted today about the hero's journey, that there are always going to be those things. So now I look at those opportunities, those challenges as, okay, what am I supposed to learn from this? Amen. How can I grow from this? This is something I teach my clients as much. I'm like, when you look back on your past mistakes and failures, if you learn from them, then weren't they positive experiences overall? Like, yeah, I guess so. I'm like, okay, so when you look at the next challenge and adversity, if you ask yourself in those moments, what am I supposed to learn from this? What am I supposed to gain from this? And have that sense of curiosity and adventure as a kid that we do, and then continue just to take it one step at a time, again, being unstoppable and not giving yourself excuses. You just learn as you grow. And that's carried with me my entire life. So being a dad, waking him up in the morning is just a phenomenal experience. It's not always easy. There's been times where I've been like, I just want to rattle this kid's brain. And I sit there, I take a couple of deep breaths.
That's real parenthood.
Yeah.
I walk outside. I walk outside his bedroom. I'm like, okay, where is he at? Where is he at right now? He doesn't understand that some things are, cost money. He doesn't understand that, you have to pick up your room. So he is in this like play mode. So I have to sit there and go, okay, why don't you think it's important to pick up your toys? Well, so I don't lose them. Okay. I have to reason with him on his level. And it's taught me so much about myself as well. And, it's again, thinking about the love and affection that I give him and thinking about my childhood. Sometimes God's honest truth, I'm still surprised that I'm as loving and as caring and as affectionate as I am. But because I've had amazing people in my life, like Tammy, like my other girlfriend, Michelle, I was with her for 5 years, a beautiful person, still friends with her to this day. And then being with Barb now, we just celebrated 21 years on February 19th of our first date. Yes. So 21 years of dating, and we've been married now for this year will be our 16th year. And she's been amazing. Another thing
I just want to point out real quick with you is for everyone else, for everyone listening is, and again, look at Christopher and what he came from. Now, we talked about how he was able to go back to school. So he went after something kind of professionally, but he also found the success in his family life. And this is something that I know for Walt too, and for Christopher, like when you come from that kind of background and you didn't really have, you either had missing parent or your parents weren't together, they divorced or
abusive.
Yeah. That you're afraid, you become afraid to, like you said, trust anyone and trust that you can have a loving relationship and trust that you could be a good parent.
Trust yourself.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And this is something Walt and I have discussed before too, is like, there's so many people out there that they become afraid to be a parent because of what they went through. And they don't want to, like you mentioned it, I don't want to ruin another life. Like, I don't want to do it to my child, what my parent did to me. And they're so afraid of that they're missing out on that huge joy in life of having those things because of the fear.
Yeah.
And you're showing everyone that it's possible and that it doesn't have to be your parent either. Look how Bill came into your life. And I know for Walt, his Aunt Diana came into his life. Those people came into your life to show you that it's possible. And you took it and ran with it. And that's what I just hope people take away, that you can find people that love you and that you can trust and that are there for you and will guide you and mentor you, that's out there. And that you can become a loving parent. You can be a loving spouse, even if it wasn't shown to you by your parent or whoever raised you.
You have the choice.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And
Always.
if you're willing to do the work on yourself, you can have that joy in your life. So don't run from the possibility of having love in your life because of what's happened to you. It just, like, I think both of you have really found in your life that by trusting that you trusted the people that did come into your life, and look at where you've turned out.
Well, we took a risk on getting hurt again.
Oh, yeah.
I think a lot of times it's the fear, as we talked about a little bit, but a lot of what stops us is the fear of the unknown. So sometimes you just have to take the risk.
Mm-hmm.
And
Gotta jump.
a lot of time, and you'll never lose taking the risk, because you're either going to learn something or you're going to win. So you're either going to get what you went after, or you're going to learn something that's going to make you better the next time.
Mm-hmm.
So don't
100%.
ever shy away from the fear and the risk, because you'll ultimately find that that's where the true happiness and joy comes from.
And I think I want to point this out too. And I think this is really cool, just listening to your story. You know, Christopher, you and I have talked a lot, but we're just going back and forth, right? That's how we normally communicate with each other. But I think it's really cool to hear how Bill basically adopted you.
Yeah.
That's kind of what he did, right?
He did.
Without legally doing it, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And then you turned around and you adopted Jackson. And the impact you're going to make on his life and the legacy that he's going to leave through you is profound. And also, you're like, we get so afraid that we're not going to be able to love the way that we feel like this human being child is going to need to be loved.
Right.
But I think you're able to love him the way that you can, the way that you do. One, because you've healed, so you've increased your capacity. But two, because you've really unlocked the gift from not being loved through your healing journey. Mm-hmm. And because you understand what it's like not to be loved, not to be seen, not to be heard, to be silenced, to try to earn somebody's love. Conversely, you also, the opposite side of that is you know how to make somebody feel amazing and feel seen and heard and loved. And that's what you do for Jackson. And I think it's such a beautiful cycle that happens sometimes, where you can take this trauma and this tragedy, you can really show the unbreakable nature of the human spirit by working on you, but then you gift this new legacy to somebody else for you that you adopted. Like, how beautiful is that life cycle that started with Bill?
You turn your pain into purpose, like we talked about.
So true. And guys, I got to tell you this, you know, one of the greatest gifts that I had the opportunity to do was come full circle in my life. You know, once I started getting successful in probably my mid-20s, I never told people about my story. I never told people that I was homeless and everything like that. But I started progressively being honest with people, and people found that they had a judgment about me because I was confident and I was doing these things, and they had this perception about me, because I was a lot like my mom at that point. Ultimately, I got to go back and go to the school that I dropped out of and speak to the 7th and 8th grade class. It was a crazy story.
Wow.
But ultimately, I got to go
awesome.
walk back in that gymnasium here as a successful person in a corporate career, making great money. Now I'm starting to speak and starting to coach on the side of my corporate career. And I got invited to come back to the school. And I walked in the gymnasium, and as the kids are filing in, I was shocked. I was literally shocked at how young they looked. Because I'm like, somebody, I actually asked the principal, I said, "Are you guys spoofing me? Is this like the 4th grade class?" And they're like, "No, these are 7th and 8th graders." I was like, wow, I thought I was so much older, and I thought I became a man overnight. But after I got done speaking to the class, all these kids lined up to talk to me. Like, "Hey, you know, my dad left me. My mom's on drugs. Can I give you a hug?" You know, I'm in Olive Crest Children's Foundation, which is a place that I personally volunteer, and I mentor at-risk kids that were like me, on the edge of going to jail or killing themselves. And I still do this to this day. Just a couple of weeks ago, I went and spoke for a class of one of the most at-risk kids, group of kids here in Riverside County. A teacher that I know, she invites me every once in a while, and I got to go speak to those kids and tell them I was just like you guys. I was
so
doing
purposeful
things,
Yes,
and so that seeing that impact and seeing that, feeling that first full circle just empowered me so much that, you know, once you instill belief and love into people and they start taking that opportunity to grow for themselves, you know, it's like I said, it's imperfect. You stumble your way through it. It's not always easy. Sometimes it's hard. Sometimes it's downright frustrating and everything else, but just get yourself back up every single time and say, okay, what did I learn from that? What can I use from that experience? How can I learn not to do things differently the next time? And, you know, having Jackson in my life and you know, I love him. I give him kisses all the time. I give him hugs and affection. I get into bed with him and I snuggle with him. I never had any of that stuff in my life. So I'm so proud of myself, and I give myself that credit because, you know, it takes work. I've been to therapy. I've been on antidepressants in my life. I'm not on them anymore because I just continue to do that work. I've read thousands of self-help books and hundreds of hours of videos online. I've been to seminars. I've had coaches. I have personally invested in myself to keep continuing to go because there's still that latent little boy inside of me sometimes that goes, okay, but as long as I continue to grow and to learn and to empower myself and to help other people, I find that meaning in that journey of that growth to continue on.
I love that. So let's talk about that. It's a great segue to giving people things that they can utilize right now.
Sure.
In order to catapult their own journey. Because ultimately that's what we're sharing for. Like, we all know our stories. We're really sharing to give the audience something that they can take away. So what's the number one biggest thing? If you can say, you know, Walt and Steph listening on the other end right now, what is the one thing that you can do right now today to transform the trajectory of your life and where you're going to be at 6, 12 months from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, a decade from now? What's the thing that can really get somebody pushed in that right direction?
The thing that they could get pushed in that direction, it's a great question. Well, is the fact of having gratitude. So many times, like, you know, there's the reticular activation system in our brain that says, you know, what I look at more becomes more apparent in my life. You know, if I sit there and tell you guys to look around your room and tell me what's blue, you look around and see what's blue. But if I ask you what's red, you'll be like, Chris, I was looking for what's blue. The same thing in our life. If we're looking at what negativity we have, if I kept looking for how people were going to continue to screw me over and how miserable I was and everything else, I would have attracted more people into my life and more experiences like that. But to start to have gratitude for where you're at and the fact that you're still here breathing and you're still healthy and you have all your limbs and everything else, and you have so much capacity right now with the internet. And I didn't have the internet. I didn't have YouTube and all that other stuff. You can literally go the palm of your hand, ladies and gentlemen, you have all the answers you could ever possibly want. If you're in financial situations, how to get out of financial situations. If you have relationship, you have that power. But gratitude, guys, you know, when you start seeing what you have and then focusing more on that, you can undoubtedly get there as well.
I love that you said that, the gratitude, and that it's what we focus on. That's huge. Because if it's just like you said, I love that example of the colors, because it's just a simple way to illustrate that what you focus on is what you're going to see. So if you're only looking at the negative, you're only going to see the negative. You're looking at the positive, you're going to see positive. And it's so true. I can't stress that enough.
And so choose what you're about to look at. It was like our car went into the shop the other day. I'll tell this quick 30-second story. Our car went into the shop the other day. We're literally about to go to California. Our car's 2 years old, y'all. 2 years old, brand new, $50,000 vehicle. They replaced the engine, the shocks, all this stuff, right? So we're getting ready to go to Cali. My wife walks out in the garage. They just replaced the engine. I'm not kidding you guys, like a month ago. And maybe 3 weeks ago. And she goes, it smells like gasoline in the garage.
Yeah, it was like an overpowering smell of gasoline.
I was like, what? So I go in the garage and literally I was afraid it was going to blow up. So I opened up all the doors in the garage and stuff to get moving. Well, come to find out, they got to replace all this extra stuff that they screwed up when they put the engine in.
Oh my God.
So in that moment.
Yeah, and we had gone like 3 months without our car.
In that moment, I'm like, oh man, we still about to go to California to do this stuff with our daughter. She's really looking forward to it. I was grateful, number one, that I could go get a rental. I was grateful that I could take it to the service center. There was a lot to still be grateful for, but that wasn't the point. So I think gratitude's like, don't live in gratitude and don't be happy. But so they gave us a Ford Explorer, and we don't ever recognize Ford Explorers. There must have been 50,000 of them between us and California because we're in one. So now we're seeing more of them, right? So even when you're in the tornado, if you don't focus on gratitude and you don't focus on where you're headed and you keep focused on life happening to you and where you're at, then you're going to end up stuck. And we're going to talk about Chris's coaching program here in a second and how he can help you get unstuck. But Chris, first, you know, you're in the middle of writing this book. And you and I have conferred a lot about that because I've written one and you've been wanting to finish this. And I think you're at like 2 million words. How many words are you at now?
166,000 words.
Baby Jesus, part 2.
Yeah,
So
we're
proud of you
going to
that
break it
you're
down there. We're going to
actually
break it
writing
down there. But yeah, I just wanted to get it all out and have that, that mind up of getting the whole experience out for people to learn from it. And especially for my son, I wanted him, in case God forbid something happens to me tomorrow, he's 6 years old. When he gets older, he can see what his dad went through and see, the game plan of overcoming your trials and tribulations to continue to grow even through the toughest times.
And so give everybody, the audience, give them the title and give them, I know you're working on the tagline, but I still like the one that you got. Give them that, show them the view for those watching on YouTube.
Yep, there it is. It's called It's Just You and Me, Kid. It's a story of a mother and son survival on the streets of California. And the reason why it's called It's Just You and Me, Kid is because when I was born, my mother was going to place me for adoption, but the nurse said, "Do you want to see him before we take him away?" And she said, "Yes." And they placed me on her chest and she looked at me and she says, "Well, I guess it's just you and me, kid." Because at that point, my sister was living with her dad and she was on welfare and everything. And she just decided at that moment not to place me for adoption. And so, yeah, it's an amazing story. It's been, as you know, Walt, you wrote Monsters in My House, and I take a lot of spirit and inspiration from how you approach that reliving those experiences, because when you get into the weeds and the nuts and bolts of having to relive that and paint that picture for somebody else, it does in a sense re-traumatize you in a certain aspect, but at the same time, it from a different aspect and a different perspective, I find so much gratitude because all of those little things helped me become the person that I am today. So I have gratitude for all of those challenges. As crazy as it sounds, I would never want to repeat them again. Once we got out of the motel, my mom actually got out of the motel. She got another house, and she did get her 4-bedroom house with a pool. God is my witness, she did it. But again, she lost that house, and we went through the whole experience of her being homeless and then ultimately her health declining. So in this book, it's really just a inspirational journey for people to know that no matter how bad and how rock bottom you can get, having that gratitude and that appreciation for those experiences, and to have that foresight to sit there and say, okay, what can I personally do to be responsible for my life and not blame everybody else? We see so many people that are in that victim mindset. Well, it's your fault and it's everything else. Case in point, my sister, I lost touch with my sister when she was 16, like I said, before she left. And all I wanted was for us to have a family, like I said. And so ultimately we got reconnected in 2005. And I figured she went and lived with her dad. Her dad got remarried. Normal people. He was very successful, psychologically normal and everything else, not addictions or anything. And I was shocked, guys, that my sister turned out exactly like my mom. A ton of cats in her house, a bunch of books, book smart, went in the same occupation. Every single thing she was blaming, it's mom's fault because I got fired. It's mom's fault because I have all these problems. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I stayed with mom. I was homeless with mom. I endured more physical abuse than you ever did. And I went through all these experiences. And how can you, and she goes, well, baby brother, how did you do that? And I said, I chose not to be like her. And that was it. I said, I just chose not to be like, I made an active choice not to be like her. I chose to heal from my wounds. I chose not to blame anybody else because I can't. Why? How can I blame her for those experiences? She went through her own tough experiences. Somewhere it's got to break down. And I figured with all people, it would have been you, Maria, but she turned out exactly like her, much to the point a year after we got reconnected, I had to wish her well because she was so ingrained in that victim situation. There was nothing I could do or say. And I was not going to stand by and have her be a toxic person in my life. And so I said, Maria, I love you. I hope you have the best life. It was nothing malicious or whatsoever. I hope you have a great life. I hope you find all the happiness, but I got to continue moving on. So please don't contact me anymore. And so when you have those boundaries, that says again to the universe that you're taking pride and respect and honor for your particular life and your journey. And just because I've done that, I've helped so many other people distance themselves from other people that were toxic in their life.
What's wild is we did yesterday on the podcast that we launched, episode 5, was literally on boundaries. And we talked about that. You can love people from afar.
Yeah.
But if you don't set boundaries and teach people how you expect to be treated, what your requirements are for what you will and won't take in your own life, you diminish your own capacity. 100%. And moreover, by diminishing your own capacity, those people who deserve that best version of you, they don't get somebody who's maximizing their potential. And I think that that's a huge piece of those boundaries. So I'm really proud of you for doing that. And I think that takes us to the coaching program for you too, is, you really take people from being who you were, right? Living a life of regret, making mistakes, struggling to forgive themselves, living in the shame, living in that this is happening to me, not for me. I am who I am. And, because of what I went through in the negative sense, instead of saying I am who I am because of what I went through, which is where you take them into that positive sense and really changing their entire mindset. And by changing their mindset, changing their life. So you have no excuses coaching. That's what you do. That's what you live. That's what you represent. That's what you did for yourself. And you do this for other people now worldwide. And I think it's such a beautiful thing to turn that pain into purpose. So just talk real quick, little 30-second, 60-second clip on like what you do for your coaching outside of maybe what I just said and how people can reach you specifically.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's all about being inspirational and figuring out how to become a part of the solution rather than being a part of the problem. So I empower people just to shift their perspective just a little bit, just a little notch. You know, can you see that life is happening for you instead of to you? Yes, I can. Can you see how there's opportunities for you to look at your mistakes and your failures as stepping stones to get where you are? Yes. So it's just about shifting their perspective to go from that victim mindset, like I'm waiting for somebody else to come save me, and taking that responsibility to sit there and say, okay, who are the 5 people I'm around the most, and making those determinations. What am I tolerating from myself and from other people and from inanimate objects, and making that about setting those boundaries and having those values and that integrity, having a big why in your life. So many times we're just surviving day to day. When I decided that my why in life was that I was going to fight for what's right and what's fair, and I was going to risk for which that mattered, and left the earth a better place for who I am and what I did. When I wake up in the morning, I set that intention every single day that today, if this is my last day, I'm going to spend every opportunity I can to fulfill that legacy. So when you have a big enough why, you have a big enough how. So I take people from that mindset of seeing themselves as a victim and being able to empower themselves to be excited and adventurous and curious about what it is that they can become, and having that leverage and being able to find the deeper root of why it is that they're in the space that they are, as opposed to just dealing with the symptom, which is so often what's done in the healthcare system and a lot of what's done in psychology and psychiatry is dealing with the symptoms of situations. When you deal with that root and you pull that root out, then you have an opportunity to plant something else better that's going to be fulfilling for your life. And so I walk them through that, and I teach them really to love themselves. Honestly, guys, I found in my experience that so many people don't love and respect themselves, but they have these expectations that they're going to be successful and happy. And it all starts with ourselves. It all starts with aligning and being congruent with our values and our biggest why that we have here in the world.
Speaking our language.
Well, I just want to thank you so much, Christopher, for coming on the show.
Thank you.
We just really appreciate your wisdom. I think we had some great takeaways today from you, and how to not have excuses on why we can't be successful, and to love ourselves. And
so you didn't say where they could find you. So let's make sure we definitely put that out there. It'll be in the description too with the link, but go ahead.
Sure. NoExcusesCoach.com. It's pretty simple. They could just go NoExcusesCoach.com. They want to find out other information about me. They could just Google hashtag NoExcusesCoach. They could find all sorts of different interviews and things of that nature. But I would love to speak with anybody. And as a gift for anybody who's listening or watching this show, I will gift you a 45-minute coaching session on me just for taking the time to listen to this and to start taking your life seriously. There's no sales. There's no nothing. We just spend 45 minutes talking about what's going on in your life, specific problem. And I'll kind of arm you with some tools and some strategies that will get you started in your path towards successful happiness.
I love it. So you want to keep living in tumultuousness and stay where you're at? You don't want to grow? Then don't reach out to Chris. He just offered you a free coaching session, which people,
a gift.
Right, you pay a lot of money for that in order to help you get unstuck. And then you can figure out whether or not you and Christopher have the synergy needed to move forward and coach. And so, this isn't about pitching other people's stuff on here. This is about bringing people that are aligned with the Legacy Warrior spirit, what we're about, and then giving you opportunities to work with people who can really help you maximize your potential. Because ultimately, each and every one of you guys out there listening or watching on YouTube, this is really about helping you become the best version of yourself, because we've been able to do the same things. And Christopher, you said at the beginning, at our ages, we're still growing. We'll never stop until our last breath. This is about maximizing who we are as human beings. And so if look in the description, I'll have a link to Christopher's NoExcusesCoach.com, and go to that website, look him up, make the dang appointment, and catapult your journey and where you're going and what's next for you, so that you can come on this show and talk about how Christopher helped you transform your life today by sharing how he transformed his.
Yeah, let's go.
Thank you guys so much. It's been an honor and a privilege to be here with you guys, dancing in conversation. You're my beautiful friends as well. But sitting here and having you guys ask me some really beautiful questions, I'm so glad to be here to inspire the audience and everybody else, because together we can make this world a pretty amazing place, irregardless of all the negativity that's going on in the world. We can all be that light for somebody else. And the only thing I ask for people is that if you're inspired from this, go out there and do something nice for somebody else today, and just pay it forward, because that way we can make this world a beautiful planet for my son and all the other kids that are going to come after us. So thank you guys so much.
Well, thank you, Christopher. I love you, brother. And, we'll stay on and talk after this because that's what we do. But I'll go ahead and close out. So look, join Stephanie and I next week as we talk about how expectations, y'all heard Christopher talk about them. We're about to talk about them next week, about how expectations will absolutely crush your happiness and your relationships. The episode is going to be fire. We have talked about this on Clubhouse and other platforms, and just talking about how gratitude will transform your life versus the expectations we all have. So look, if this helped you, share this episode with someone you know who can use it. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and connect with us on Instagram. It's easy, at Legacy Warrior Podcast. We'd love to hear what you think about the show. We'd love to hear how what Christopher talked about helped you. We'd love to hear what you'd like for us to talk about, because this is really about you. And so until the next time, stay in the arena of life, keep fighting, taking steps forward, and
leave this world a little bit better than you found it.
See y'all next week.
Talk about.
Yay.